Welcome to Screenshots. I'm here with my co-host Juan Araya, who's back from his working vacation to Florida. Juan, what do we have for the viewers today?
Well, we're going to talk about the Soundshore Invitational. Great tournament run by Mark Parsons. Once again, great job.
Winning the tournament and playing in it is always impressive.
That's great. We had some good upsets there, some good matches to talk about. And then this weekend we're having the Long Island Invitational. And actually now they're currently playing the women's draw. And tomorrow is going to be the men's draw on wet conditions. So interesting matchups there.
Hopefully not too wet. Okay, we'll be right back with all that. So Juan, your vacation plans interfered with doing our wrap-up of Sound Shore, so
Yes.
we apologize to everybody for that.
It wasn't actually a vacation. I went to help Leonard at Jones Island. I did teach some tennis there.
In between the raindrops.
It wasn't raining that much, but it was fun. Yeah.
Okay, glad to hear it. Hopefully you're not moving anytime soon. I'd miss you a lot.
No.
Okay, so let's talk about Sound Shore. Let's start in the round of 16. First round of 16 match I saw was between Patricio Mistrano and Anton Mavrin versus Mick Urdoya and Mark Innes.
Yeah.
Did you get to see any of that?
I saw a little bit of that. I think that Mick and Mark were playing pretty well at the beginning. And I know Mick wanted to win that match badly, not because they were playing Patricio and Anton, but it's because they wanted to play Parsons and Durant in the run after that. But I think they started well, but then Patricio and Anton made the right adjustments.
Patricio played great. Anton struggled. Patricio was really the best player on the court. And I don't think they played them real well. Way too many changing of sides with the ball and too many balls into Mick's forehand. But ultimately, in a kind of up and down third set, they're able to prevail 6-4 in the third. So on the next courts, Nathan Lefevre and Anthony Casamano were playing Alex Hume and Tommy Croker in a terrific match, which Croker...
Is it Crocker or Croker?
I'm told from my sources in the D.C. area it's Croker.
Okay.
So a terrific match, which Croker and Hume end up winning 6-6. Big breakthrough for those guys. We'll talk about them in a minute because they were your quarterfinal matchup. And then the other round of 16 worth talking about was Parsons Durant versus Le Pavere and Parr.
A nice three-setter. I think that Parsons and Durant didn't play well. They made too many silly mistakes.
I agree with that, although I think part of the reason they didn't play well is clearly the strategy from Corey and Max was to play a fast style and not let them get any rhythm. So the first set is very competitive, goes to a breaker, and Max implodes in the tiebreaker. I mean, he made like 5 horrible errors. I was trying to be nice on air. It was very difficult. So they lose that set, and they show a lot of fortitude. They bounce back. They win the second. They get behind early in the third, and the train starts rolling. Max struggled with his forehand that match, similar to Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay, so quarterfinal matchups. Parsons Durant versus Mavrin Mistrano. Mavrin Mistrano would play 2 very long matches getting through. Really didn't have much.
I was playing right next to them, and to be honest, in the changeovers we were watching, and their body language was not good.
I think they were beat when they walked on the court.
Yeah,
so Parsons and Durant, that was their one easy match of the Final Four from the 16s on. They win easily. You guys versus Croker and Hume. So Croker. Talk to me a little bit about that match. And from the sidelines, it really felt like you guys, A, didn't play very well, and B, never really got out of third gear. Did you ever feel threatened in the match?
No, actually. I mean, I didn't feel threatened. However, those guys are good players. You know, they play a modern style of the
I love Alex
game.
Hume game. A lot of offense.
Yeah, and Tommy has a monster forehand. Don't put a ball there. But, you know, I think that I never felt that we were going to lose the match, but we weren't playing well. And all of a sudden, in the first set, we're down 4-2.
With points for 5-2.
Yeah, and it started to rain a little bit. But, you know, momentum changed.
Well, one of the things that happens in these tournaments, it becomes such a huge part of it, you and I have discussed this, is stamina. And they played a couple of very long matches to get there, and you guys had a much easier route.
Yeah, but I don't think it was a fitness issue. It was more like momentum change. We started making less mistakes.
Well, the one part of Tommy's game, which of Alex's game, which really needs work, is his overhead. He hits that hard, flat overhead so many times into the back wire.
Yeah, and against Mike, that's not a good shot. Okay,
so you guys win that quarter. And then 2 terrific quarters after that. First one was Marco Grangero and George Wilkinson, versus John Lubau and Steve DeRose.
Yes, and actually before the tournament we picked Marco and George to win, but it was much closer. We did say it was going to be a close match anyways, but that result doesn't surprise me. I think that either team it was 50-50, but you actually made me pick.
I
You
did.
put me
I
on the
insisted
spot.
You got off the fence.
And I did pick Marco and George, but it was 50-50. I think that John and Steve are not playing their best paddle. But, it doesn't really matter. You want to pick by nationals.
Well, Marco and George are playing some really good paddle. I was very impressed how they played against you guys in the 16s in Chicago, a match they ultimately lost, where I thought they were the better team, and they had a great tournament at Sound Shore. Final quarter of the night, Broderick Palmer, Bostrom Bredberg. Everybody liked Broderick Palmer coming in. Sebi and Martin come out and kind of punch him in the face early, win the first set 6-2. How much of it did you see?
Nothing.
Okay, so second set really was a set that I thought Sebi and Martin should have won, but Drew and Jared rely on their experience. They pull through. You feel like the momentum's on their side. 2-2 in the third. They switch courts. They switch onto the streaming court, and we get to watch the end of the match. And Sebi really took advantage of Jared. So Jared's hitting a lot of those three-quarter pace drives. Sebi must have hit 10 drop shots that I saw for winners. And I think he really shook Jared up. Jared stopped driving the ball with any real authority. And there was just so much Drew could do. And Bredberg Bostrom, we'll talk about this as the year goes on, that team goes as Martin Bostrom goes. Because Martin supplies most of the offense in the backcourt, and when he's hitting the ball well and moving his feet, they're a load. But when he's not, he's a load for Sebi to carry around.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Okay, so on to Sunday, the semis. Let's talk about your match first. So you and Mike Cochran against Parsons Durant.
Yeah.
You said to me before the match, nobody beats Juan Araya 27 times in a row.
No, and actually I felt that way that day. I felt great. I had a great night of sleep, which usually when I have to play Mark and Johan, I don't sleep well the night before. But I felt great, and we started the match 2-love down, but then we win the next 6 games in a row. We win 6-2. And they were playing well, and they're not playing well. They were making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, I don't think they played particularly well the entire tournament.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Which is a little bit daunting, given they ultimately won. Really didn't play well, didn't get out of third gear, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, and in the second set, we're down 3-4. I'm serving 40-love, and I played a very loose game. I think that was what changed everything, and they started playing better. They started making less mistakes. They won 6-3, and then we're up 2-love in the third, but then they stepped it up and they beat us. I think that we play well together with Mike, but they played well enough to beat us. And I think it was a good match. We played great points, fast style.
Well, as we've talked about, to me there are two keys to beating them. One, you have to be able to hurt them from the backcourt, which obviously you and Mike can. And two, you have to volley exceptionally well, which also is a skill you guys have. So going into that match, I thought it was a match where you guys could threaten them. Obviously you did. Threatening them and beating them are two different things.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll have some more opportunities.
Yeah,
we'll have to amend the 27 times in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other semi was a wild paddle match. It was Marco Grangero and George Wilkinson versus Sebastian Bredberg and Martin Bostrom. So a battle for the apartment, Sebi and George.
What about those scores? I mean,
6-love, 1-6, 6-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Marco and George came out, played a great first set, and then their level dropped precipitously. It wasn't like Sebi and Martin did anything to really get back in the match. They played a little more solidly, but Marco and George played a couple of bad games to start the second set, and all of a sudden they're down and they're back on their heels, and Martin's hitting the ball better. And Martin was very up and down in that match. Footwork got very sloppy at times, and ultimately I think that was the difference, as Marco and George won relatively easily in the third. Which brings us to the final.
Yeah.
Coming in, I thought that Marco and George would play a slow style against those guys, but they did anything but. They played real fast. They were ahead in the second set. I guess they're up 3-love and 4-1 after losing the first set. And you just felt like there was this inexorable wave coming from Durant Parsons, and it just felt like Durant Parsons knew they were going to win. But then Marco and George end up pulling out the second set.
I watched a little online, and that's exactly how I felt watching. I never thought Mark and Johan were going to lose that match, but the score somehow was super close, and all of a sudden they win the second. Marco and George win the second set in a breaker, and now they're going to a third set. And it's like I didn't understand. If you went by the score, it really didn't reflect the way they all looked on the court. I mean, it was a close match. I mean, I think it was very well played. Marco and George played very well. I think George played a great tournament.
Well, between the second and third sets, it was interesting. Marco and George have all the momentum at this point, and they took a long time getting ready to start the third set. My partner on air, Jerry Vion, we were commentating, was commenting about that she would have liked to have seen them get out there quickly and have the third set be kind of an extension of the second set. They don't do that. They split the first two games of the third set. On game points in the 1-all game, they play a simply astonishing point where the ball goes through back and forth. They're 12 of the greatest gets I've ever seen. Parsons Durant win the point. Parsons Durant slap hands and change sides. Marco and George are flat out in the court. Marco is extended. He's completely prone on the court. George is leaning against the side wire in exhaustion. And at that moment in time, you really got the feeling they were happy to be part of the show, which obviously is a death knell to your chances of winning.
Yeah. No, I think it was a good. I watched the third set, and it was a good, well-played third set. But like I said, I never felt like Johan and Mark were going to lose that much.
Well, Marco and George had a great tournament, a final at Sound Shore, a lot of points. I think it puts them in the running for a top 4 seed at Nationals.
Yeah, no, and I mean, if I have to pick the player of the tournament, I would pick George Wilkinson.
I agree. George played great. He was consistent. He lobbed better off his wires where he's somewhat susceptible. The forehand was terrific.
Even his shot selection was good. He played smart paddle, which is very rare for him. Shocking.
Okay, so that wraps up the final of Sound Shore, and now we're going to talk next about Long Island Invitational.
Yep.
Okay, so this weekend we have the Dwayne Hayden Long Island Invitational, named after Dwayne, who was one of the preeminent tournament directors in the country. He's run 2 great nationals, at least 2 great that I played in. I don't know if you ran the 1992 nationals or the 82 nationals.
I think I was in diapers.
Okay. So the Dwayne Hayden Invitational, we have a somewhat spotty weather forecast, which we'll talk about as we start previewing the matches. First match I want to talk about is the Dan Rothschild, Mike Rafferty, DJ Getz, Nick Bergman match, round of 32. Yes. Good match.
It's a very good match. I think the weather is going to play a big role there. DJ is playing really well. Well, we all know how Danny Rothschild can play.
John Schmidt is out. We had some minor knee procedure, so he's out for a few weeks. So Danny, who's terrific, is playing with Mike Rafferty. Clearly, Mike's going to see a lot of balls. Yeah,
I think that Mike is going to see a lot of balls, and Nick is going to see a lot of balls. Nick is also a very talented player. I think he has some great matches, and he has some not so good matches. Hopefully, tomorrow he'll play well. I'm looking forward to watching that match.
Yeah, at the end of the day, a little bit worried about Rafferty's net play, but I think Danny's the best player on the court.
Yeah.
And it's hard to pick against Dan Rothschild.
And he can take over. He's quick. He can take over.
And he's an explosive player.
Yeah.
So next match in the 32s we should talk about is Brian O'Connor and Devin Wakeford versus Ray Crosta and Steve Holler. Wow, where do you want to start with this one?
Well, I think the rain is going to play a big role because
Brian loves playing in the rain, doesn't he?
Brian absolutely loves playing with the rain and all kind of elements. The wind, nothing bothers him. He's like very mentally strong.
Very mentally strong.
Yeah, so I think that Brian and Devin are the modern paddle players, while Ray and Steve Haller are the classic paddle. And I think in the rain, experience could play a big role there too. So I think I wouldn't pick on anybody, but if you put me on the spot, I will actually have to pick the mental toughness of Brian O'Connor.
I'm not exactly sure what to say to that, but having played against Brian in the rain, if it rains, I will pick against whoever he's playing.
Even if he plays you and Max?
Even if he plays me and Max.
Okay.
So that's a good match, and it's great to see Steve Holler back.
Yeah, great.
I'm surprised he got permission from his wife, although maybe he hasn't told her yet. That's another story.
That's another story.
Next matchup, which we're only talking about because of the weather, is myself and Aman Singh versus Rupert and Wright. Given Aman's patience level, I think that would have been a tough matchup for us. But again, the rain may impact things, and Aman is a very skilled, talented player.
And I want to say, you didn't want to talk about this match, but given the weather, I think it could be an interesting match. The weather, we all know, the paddle players, that when it rains, it's a huge equalizer. And it benefits the tennis players because the constant lobbing and the patience game is kind of taken out of the equation. And I think if a man plays his his game and
His crazy game.
his crazy game, which in this weather can help him, you guys have a good chance. But I will have to pick Rupert and Wright just because they have the experience and Aman doesn't. I mean, you have a lot of experience.
Too much, some might say.
Yeah, a lot of experience.
Okay, enough with a lot of experience.
You have experience, but I think Mark and Rusty, are a better team. Hopefully, we'll get to see some good points there.
One of the factors is how much grit there is in the court, because the amount of grit on the courts is very inconsistent, and you'll get courts where the ball will play decently in the rain and courts where the ball slides and it's
how
unplayable
much
in the rain.
grit there is in your paddle too.
Yeah.
I think Rusty plays with the same paddle since 1960, and if there is not much grit left on his paddle, I don't think he'll be able to keep the ball in play.
And he has more experience than I do, Juan.
He probably does. Yeah.
Okay, so that takes us through the 32 matchups. Round of 16, we have the winner of those two matchups. For argument's sake, let's assume somehow Brian O'Connor's mental toughness wins out and they play against Rupert and Wright. Again, modern paddle versus old school paddle.
Yeah, given the weather, I will have to pick Brian.
Again, mental
And then-
toughness.
Yes, the mental aspect of the game is huge, and Brian is, since he
A
has
mental giant.
Yeah, he's a mental giant.
Okay, so next round of 16, which I'm really excited about, is David Caldwell's back playing.
Yeah.
And
And he's playing with the cage fighter, John Pastel.
John Pastel.
Great player, by the way, not known around the paddle world, but a very good player.
Has John played any paddle tournaments?
I think he played in the past, but he hasn't done that well. But he's a very good player. He still plays a little bit of tennis on the court, but he's very talented. He makes some shots like when I play with him, I can't believe he's making those shots. But I think he's going to be a good partner for David.
So they're playing against Patricio Mistrano and Jeff Morneau, a pickup team.
Once again, I think that they are the one person that doesn't have the experience is John. Jeff and Patricio are experienced players. They've been playing tournaments for a long time. I don't know how much they like playing in the rain. But I think
Does
the
anybody
weather.
but Brian like playing in the rain?
I think David is a good rain player. He's quick. He drives the ball. He likes to drive the ball off the wire on the rain. I would, for not the tournament player, but I would say it's better. It's much easier to drive off the wires than off the deck because the ball skids. So and David is fast. He can drive a lot of balls off the screens. So I would pick them actually. Knowing John, I know John, how John plays, and that will benefit his game, I think.
Okay, so final round of 16 matchup we want to talk about is Corey Parr and Max Lepevert versus Javi Ferrin-Cranewater and Andre Bonifigli.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that match?
We played Max and Corey on the rain, Leonard and I at the Patterson Open, and they didn't do that well. Since then, Corey has been playing more. I don't know if he has played on the rain more, but he has become a better player. He has improved a little. I think he still has long ways to go. He can play a lot better.
Max called me. He wants to drill tonight, and he wants me to hold a hose outside of the court and shoot it at them as they're playing. Do you think that's a good idea?
That doesn't surprise me because Max is kind of a freak on those things. By the way, Max, thank you for inviting me to play in your exhibition last night. So
who are we picking in that match?
I would pick Max and Corey.
Max and Corey.
Just because also Javi.
Well, Andrea is relatively new. Andrea last year was his first full season playing.
Yeah, and Andrea still plays a little bit of tennis. His overheads, I think, are the weakest part of.
Always an issue for tennis players.
Yeah, it's the weakest part of that team. Javi can spin the ball. He's very fast. He volleys very well. He has a good serve. But I think the rain, once again, I think overall the rain is going to be big in this event.
I'm a big fan of Javi's game.
Yeah.
I think Javi is a much better number 2 player than
Yes.
a number 1 player.
I agree with that.
Okay, so that takes us to the quarterfinals. Broderick and Palmer versus the mental giant Brian O'Connor and Devin Wakeford. How do you see that coming out? Do you give Devin and Brian much of a shot?
Well, I think that the mental toughness of Drew is going to be better than the mental toughness of Brian O'Connor.
So you're saying Drew is slightly tougher?
Slightly,
tougher?
yes, slightly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's hard to pick against Broderick Palmer, even coming off of the bad result. at
And
South
even
Shore.
though it's going to be raining and the lobbing and patience game that Drew likes to play wouldn't benefit him against other teams, Like if they beat us twice this season, but if I have to play them in the rain, I would pick us to play because of the style.
Right.
However, they're not playing us. They're playing Brian, the mental giant, and I think in this case, Drew and Jared will win that match.
Okay, so clearly we like Brian in the quarterback draw.
Yeah, I think he's going to win that draw.
I think he will too.
Yeah.
So next quarterfinal is Bredberg and Mick Ordoya versus what we're predicting is Caldwell Pastel, which sounds like a really fun match.
Fun match.
And interesting because Caldwell and Pastel are rarely not the best tennis players on the court, but in this case they won't be.
Well, yeah, with Mick on court, he's the best current tennis player. I mean, if we go back,
Right.
David could be.
But clearly on the
And
court
John,
today,
I mean, they're both.
David's giving away probably 10 years to Mick. So
Yeah, or more.
or more.
But the paddle experience there, David has the experience.
So who do you like in that match, and how do you see it unfolding?
That's a tough one. That's a tough pick.
I like Mick and Sebi.
Just because I like you, I want to go against you in this one. So I'm going to pick the cage fighter, John Pastel, and David Caldwell.
Okay, so next quarter we get to talk about your match for the first time. You guys versus English and Moore.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much to talk about there. I like you guys.
I like those guys.
Leonard's been doing wind sprints on the beach in Florida.
Well, I think so, yeah. Well, when I got there, you talk about the vacation. He took me to a boxing lesson at 5:30 in the morning the day after I landed.
Was he upset at how you treated him in one of the last tournaments?
He's
Too many
crazy.
high rolls?
He's crazy.
And is it true that he made a trip up to the villages to drill with some of the octogenarians up there?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that should help his game.
Yeah.
So last quarterfinal is Grangero Wilkinson versus Parr and Corey and Max, a rematch of a round of 16 at Atlantic, which Corey and Max won in straight sets.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on that match.
Once again, the rain is going to play a big factor, and in this case, it's going to be hard. I think either team can win, but this time, given how they are playing, I would pick Marco and George. George is playing really well. We played yesterday in a practice game. They play well.
How'd they do?
I can't. It's a practice match. We can't count the results, and I'm not gonna say that Martin and I killed them.
Okay,
but
we won't talk about that.
Yeah, no, we won't talk about that. But I think they're playing really well, and George has taken his game to a new level. And I think in this case, I have to pick them.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with that. Corey is playing really well. Corey has improved enormously. Hasn't had much experience in the rain as you talk about, so I think the rain will probably hurt them. Marco and George want to play slow. Corey and Max want to play fast. The weather could be a factor. I could see that match going virtually anyway.
Yeah.
I'll go with Marco and George in 3 sets. So that takes us to the semis, top half of the draw, Drew and Jared versus, I think,
Caldwell?
Sebi, you think Caldwell.
Yeah. How do you think they would match up against the different teams? So let's talk about Drew and Jared against Sebi and Mick.
Well, one of the things that Sebi and Martin were able to do to them at Sound Shore was hurt them when they were at the net. So I think that Mick is a comparable player to Martin. He's got the big lefty forehand in the middle. Martin hits the ball off of both sides. He doesn't have the experience that Martin has, but he doesn't have a lot less experience. I mean, I think Sebi and Mick will be a really talented, tough team, and I see that match being a very competitive match because Sebi has no fear of anybody, and obviously has a great deal of confidence.
I think so too, because also Mick can direct the action towards Jared corner. As a lefty, it's going to be easier as a team to attack Jared, and in the rain, Jared is not going to have many driving opportunities. So I think it's going to be a good match.
And how about if Caldwell gets through?
If Caldwell gets through, I would love to see that because you have 3 amazing tennis players. And Drew, who is another great tennis player, but you have 3 former...
Drew is the best paddle player on the court, unquestionably.
Drew is the best paddle player on the court by far. I think, seriously, by far. But the other 3 are really talented players. And
I just worry how much David's been playing and at what level he's been playing. I haven't seen him on the courts at all.
I think that when I used to play against David, the thing that really bothers him the most was to play when you play him slow and you get him out of his rhythm. He likes the fast pace. He likes all that. Tomorrow, if it rains, Drew and Jared will not be able to play.
But that is a semifinal, which is scheduled for the afternoon. I think the afternoon is supposed to be better than the morning.
I didn't see that in my. We have different apps in.
You have an Argentine weather app?
I have an Argentine weather app. Yeah,
Okay. Either way, it's hard to pick against Drew and Jared in that
it's
match.
hard to pick against them.
Okay, so this will be, let's go to the bottom semi. This will be your third time playing Marco and George? I guess the second time. Your third time you played him at the Paddle Player Open.
Yeah,
And then you played him again at Chicago.
yeah.
So neither time with Leonard, both times with the French sensation, the Tony
Yes.
Parker paddle, whatever his
Yeah.
name is.
Yes.
So how are things different play?
The guy that
Didn't invite you to the exhibition. So how do things change with Leonard playing with you?
I love playing with Leonard. He can drive the ball a lot. He's not as fast as Max.
Much better looking, though.
He's taller.
He's definitely taller.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be an interesting match. The weather. The few times that I played with Leonard under the rain, we didn't do that well because
Leonard should be a good rain player. He hits the ball so flat.
But the thing is, the flogging of the ball comes off, and now when you hit the drives from the back court, first he cannot drive off the deck that much because the ball skids, so it's much harder to drive. So that is kind of taken away from him, which is probably the strongest part of his game. And then also when he drives, he doesn't add that much topspin. He hits a flatter ball. So when you hit a flat ball without the flogging, the ball goes like a knuckleball, moves in the air and just flies off your paddle. So it's very hard to control that ball. That's why I think it will be hard due to the weather. Regardless, it would have been a tough match. I would always like to pick myself, but those guys are playing really well. They're playing very well. They're a very dangerous team. We had success against them in the past. We beat them in the finals of Atlantic, I think, and I don't think we play them another time. But we had success against them in the past, and I personally had success against them. But they're playing much better.
Well, for me, the whole match boils down to Leonard and how much he's been playing.
I think so.
And how well he strikes the ball.
Yeah,
because
I have to
don't think he's
agree.
really picked up his paddle since Atlantic.
He hasn't. He's
So
going
that
to
was
pick it up
6
this
weeks?
afternoon. We're going to practice against Martin and Sebastian.
Okay. So I'm picking you guys because I always pick you guys.
Okay, thanks.
Which takes us to the final, which in my opinion would be you guys versus Broderick Palmer, which will be around 7 o'clock on Saturday night since Leonard has a plane flight 7 o'clock Sunday morning.
Yeah. He didn't want to stay at my house for one night. Or actually, I got him a room at the Westchester Country Club, but he didn't want to. He didn't want to stay much longer because he said he cannot hang out with me for too long.
Now, somebody told me that Roxana said he can't stay at the house too many nights.
Yeah, that's true too.
Okay. So tell me how you see the final unfolding. You played these guys twice. You played them very competitively at Patterson, 6-3. Were up in the breaker and lost it, and then got rolled over in Atlantic.
Yeah, I mean, I only if it doesn't rain, if it's dry weather, it's gonna be a tough match. Just because those guys know how to play us, they're very smart. They're good players. I just hope it pours. I just hope it pours.
The Leonard that you played with in 2013, who was so terrific. I mean, one of the reasons you guys had so much success with Broderick Gambino was Leonard's ability to exploit Chris in the corners and Leonard's ability to hit that hard overhead, a hard overhead that Jared struggled with against Sebastian and Martin. Is that something that you guys would employ?
Yeah,
if you get
we
there?
talked about it already, but Leonard, also, we were able to take the net a lot more times before. Now we can't. We're struggling with that because we used to generate a lot of offense from Leonard's corner, but since he hasn't been playing that much, we have to change a little bit our strategy, our style of play, and it's harder for us to take the net. When we take the net, I think we're pretty successful, but if it rains, I would pick us to win that match because I can spin the ball in the rain, and then Leonard can hit the ball hard to challenge them. If it's dry, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough because he hasn't been playing much, and if Drew slows it down, he's gonna struggle with that.
Okay, so that takes us through the Long Island men. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Long Island women. About the women's tournament in Long Island. It's ongoing. It's Friday afternoon. We weren't able to film before this. We have Ann and Vicky through to a semi in the top, and they're waiting for their opponent, who's going to be either Jane McNitt or Wendy Spitz. And they're waiting for their opponent. The live scoring hasn't updated. bottom half of the draw, we had an upset. Roxy and Martina lost, tough match, to
Liz
Liz
and Marcela
Cruz.
Rodriguez, no. I don't think that was a big upset. They know each other well. Actually, Liz used to play with Roxy before. Liz is a great player. I don't know Marcela how she plays. But they're both very good tennis players. All four of them are actually good tennis players. The score was 6-4, 6-4. Roxy texted me. I think they play very well. And actually, last year, Liz had some success. She played some tournaments with Lauren Gevia, and they did very well. I think Liz is a very good player. So it is an upset based on the rankings, but that the score doesn't surprise me. I didn't see a match.
So Liz and Marcella are through to the semis, and they play the winner of the Kerry Flynn Lemry match against
Cynthia and Amy.
Cynthia and Amy.
And what I heard is that Cynthia and Amy are through. I mean, Roxy texted me that. I don't know, the score wasn't updated in the website, but let's assume Cynthia and
Okay,
Amy
so
are
let's
through.
let's talk about two matches. Let's talk about Cynthia and Amy versus Marcella and Liz Cruz in the semis, which is a rematch from the finals of Hartford
Yes,
a couple weeks ago.
yes.
Cynthia and Amy haven't lost a match other than the one in Chicago to someone other than Anna and Vicky in a long time.
Yes.
What kind of chance do you give Marcella and Liz?
I give them a good chance, even though they lost to them 2 weekends ago. Roxy told me that they play well today. So I give them a chance. However, the favorites are still Cynthia and Amy.
Now, can Liz and Marcella hit the hard overhead?
Liz can do a lot of things on the court. She can hit it hard.
Because clearly Roxy and Martina exposed Cynthia Dardis' lack of foot speed in Chicago and were very successful with that. If they try that, that could be a difference in that match.
Yeah, that could be. I like I said, I don't know how Marcela plays. I know Liz plays a very classic paddle with great racket skills. So it's interesting.
Okay, in the interest of excitement, I'm going to pick Marcella and Liz to win that match, despite the fact that I've never seen them play, because I don't want to talk about a Dardis-Shea, Brazova, Stoklasova final again, because those teams played too many times last year.
I think this is going to be another time, but if you want to make it interesting, we can talk about the other team.
We both obviously think that Anna and Vicky are getting through in the top half of the draw.
Yes. It's hard not to pick them.
It would be stupid not to pick them.
Yes.
Although some people have said that about us in the past, but we'll let
Yes.
that go.
Yes.
Those people were wrong.
Yes.
So, the finals, Anna and Vicky versus... Well, let's talk about both matchups. Anna and Vicky versus Dardis and Shea.
I don't think...
Dardis and Shea beat him here last year, the only time they beat him all year.
Yeah, this is the only tournament that Anna and Vicky didn't win.
Only sanctioned tournament.
Sanctioned, yeah. Then the money tournament that it was run at Stanwich, they did lose to Liz Cruz and Lauren Gevia in the final. I think Anna and Vicky are going to win regardless. They are currently the best team in the country. I will pick them. It doesn't matter who they play against.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not pick them? I mean, they've been dominant. They did not... Chicago, they were challenged by Martina and Roxy. I don't know that anybody else has got the firepower to challenge them right now.
I think that if Liz and Marcela make it through, they will probably challenge them a little more than Cynthia and Amy. But regardless of who wins that match and how much they're going to challenge Vicky and Anna are going to...
Well, assuming Vicky's feeling good and not nauseous, I expect them to get through.
Yes.
Okay, that takes care of the women.
Thank you.